Welcome. We experience the world through a symphony of senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. But how do these sensations transform into the rich tapestry of our perceptions? How do light waves become vibrant colors or sound vibrations become a symphony? Let's explore the fascinating interplay of sensations and perception. Sensations begins with specialized cells called sensory receptors. These tiny detectors convert physical energy into neural signals, a process called transduction. Imagine light waves hitting the photoreceptors in your eye, transforming into electrical signals, or sound waves triggering hair cells in your ear, generating neural impulses. Chemicals in food activate taste buds on your tongue, sending messages to your brain. Our senses are remarkably adaptable. Sensory adaptations help us filter out constant unchanging stimuli. Think about how you stop noticing the pressure of your clothes against your skin or the hum of the air conditioner. Sensation is just the beginning. Perception is the active process of interpreting sensory information. Your brain making sense of the raw data. It's subjective. So there are several principles that shapes our perception. First is the absolute threshold, the idea that some people are more sensitive than others. Second is the signal detection theory. It assumes that a person's absolute threshold fluctuates, sometimes being more sensitive and other times being less sensitive, depending on the cost of failing to detect the stimulus. Next is the difference threshold. It is the smallest amount of the change between two stimuli that a person can detect half of the time. And lastly, the perceptual set. It is the effect of frame of mind on perception. It is also a tendency to perceive stimuli in a certain manner.
The human eye is a complex organ and its ability to process vision relies on various parts working together. The clear dome-shaped front surface of the eye protects the eye and bends incoming light, providing about two-thirds of the eye's focusing power, essential for sharp vision. Pupil. The black circular opening in the center of the iris is not the structure itself but a hole that lets light into the eye. The iris controls its size. Iris. The colored part of the eye, a muscular diaphragm that controls the size of the pupil, regulating how much light reaches the retina, works like a camera's aperture. Lens, a transparent, flexible structure, fine-tunes the focus, allowing us to see clearly at different distances. It changes shape, a process called accommodation. Retina, it contains specialized cells called photoreceptors, rods and cones. Rods for night vision help us see in low light, while cones are responsible for color vision and sharp details. The retina converts light into electrical signals. At the center of the retina is the fovea, a tiny but crucial area packed with cones. This is where the sharpest vision occurs. When you look directly at something, light is focused into something. Light is focused into fovea, allowing you to see incredible detail. Visual acuity allows us to distinguish between two closely spaced points. Think of a fine print and threading a needle. This task rely heavily on the sharp vision provided by our cones. Visual cortex, the primary cortical region of the brain that receives, integrates, and processes visual information relayed from the retinas. Simple cells, these neurons act like picture detectors, responding best to lines or edges of a specific orientation at a particular location in the visual field. They are the building blocks for more complex visual processing, laying the groundwork for recognizing shapes and objectives. complex cells, these neurons are sensitive to movement. Unlike simple cells, complex cells aren't concerned with the exact location of stimulus. They respond when a specific feature like line is moving within the receptive field, regardless of its precise position. This helps us perceive motion and track moving objects. Hypercomplex cells, also known as end-stop cells, these cells play a role in integrating visual information. They might respond strongly to a line of a specific length, but will decrease their firing rate if the line becomes too long, effectively helping us detect corners and boundaries.
Everyone, today we're diving into how we perceive the world through sight. Let's start with perceiving visual stimuli. We perceive color through the interaction of light and our eyes. There are two main theories explaining how we do this. First, the trichromatic color theory, proposed by Thomas Young and Hermann von Helmholtz in the 19th century. This theory suggests that all the colors we see are the results of mixing three primary colors of light: the red, green, and blue. Our cone specialized cells in the retina are sensitive to these colors. By mixing their signals, our brains create the full spectrum of color. While on the other hand, the opponent processing theory proposed by Ewald Hering tells us that our cones are actually grouped into three opposing pairs: blue-yellow, red-green, and black-white. Activation in one of these colors suppresses the other. That's why, for example, you can see a reddish-green or yellowish-blue at the same time. And now let's talk about a color blindness. It's a deficiency in perceiving certain colors, typically due to inherited pigment deficiencies in the photoreceptors. But color is just one part of visual perception. Let's look at the motion perception next. When an object moves across a background, the background matters. An object moving across a complex background looks faster than one moving against a simple background. But did you know that smaller objects appear to move faster than larger ones? It's all about how our brains process speed and size. We've even tricked sometimes, like the optical illusions, into thinking something is moving when it's actually not. And now, let's explore depth perception, our ability to see in three dimensions and gauge distance. This relies on binocular cues using both eyes, like binocular disparity because our eyes are a few inches apart. Each one sees slightly different images. The brain combines this to create depth. Even if you only have one working eye, you still have monocular depth cues to rely on, like linear perspective. Even parallel lines appear to converge in the distance, or texture gradient, where textures become denser the further away they are. We also have perceptual tricks like the moon illusion, where the moon seems larger near the horizon because the cues from objects surround it. Next, let's dive into perceptual constancy. This is our brain's ability to keep our perception of size and object constant, even if the object changes position or distance. For instance, even though the size of an object on your retina shrinks as it moves farther away, you still know it's the same size. This is size constancy. Similarly, shape constantly helps us recognize objects, like a door, even when it changes angle. Our brain adjusts its perception, so we know it's the same door, even if it appears different. And let's not forget Jezrelle principles, the way our brain groups patterns together. One of the key principles is the law of similarity. It tells us that we tend to group like objects together when we see them. For example, we might group a set of blue circles separately from a set of red ones. And another is the Jezrelle principle,
where we tend to see lines or points as forming a continuous path. It helps us make sense of scattered points or curves as connected shapes. Then, there's proximity. This principle suggests that objects near each other are perceived as a group, even if they're not related. For instance, we group objects close to each other as being part of a larger whole. And finally, the law of closure. This is a fascinating principle. It occurs when we perceive a whole object even when it's not fully complete. For example, if part of a shape is missing or a circle is incomplete, our brain will fill in the gaps and will still see it as a whole. Our brain does this automatically. Even when we don't have all the information, we still see the world as whole, coherent patterns.
The physics of sounds describes sounds as mechanical waves that travels through a medium like air, with its key characteristic being frequency and amplitude, while psychophysics of hearing study how humans preserve these physical sound waves, translating the physical properties into subjective experiences like pitch and loudness through the complex processes within the ear and the brain. Amplitude is the maximum distance a wave's points move from their resting positions. Traditionally, frequency was measured as cycles or waves per second. The number of cycles that a sound wave completes in 1 second, it is frequency. Hearing begins with the sound waves vibrating your eardrums. These vibrations travel to the middle ear, amplified by tiny bones, reaching the cochlea and the inner ear. Here, the hair cells convert sound energy into neurosignal, which are then sent to the brain via the auditory nerve.